These just might be the 5 best camcorders you can get. All right, my favorite subject matter, camcorders. Why do I like camcorders so much? Well, I don't have to think when I use them. I just open it up and it automatically starts up and I push record and it does all the thinking for me. I don't have to worry about f-stops or shutter speed or ISO or is it in focus or anything. It does all that for you, and then when you're done, you just close the screen and it closes the lens cap for you and it shuts off and you don't have to worry about it. Camcorders are the most fun, easiest to use camera for video. Another benefit of camcorders is they can run all day without overheating because they have smaller sensors. The average size is around 1/2.3. They also have these great zooms that zoom really smoothly, really far. Now I know some of you are going to say, well, that's all good and everything, Marcus, but you can't get a blurry background with a camcorder. Well, those of you who are saying that haven't seen my earlier videos where I showed that you can. The secret is you zoom all the way in other words, you're further back, and then you have the background be further back too, and you can get a really nice blurry background with a camcorder with a small sensor. And I'm going to show you examples of these camcorders, how they can give you nice blurry backgrounds. All right, so let's just jump right into it. These 3 have normal size sensors, which is around 1/2.3. This one is a 1-inch sensor, and this has a tiny little sensor the size of a dot. I know there's other ones out there, but these are my favorite ones. And I think you might agree with some of this too. So for 2024, these are my 5 choices for camcorders. Let's start with the first one, the big one with a 1-inch sensor. This is a Sony AX700 coming in at $1,200. And there's also a sister camera to this, which is even more expensive at $2,000. It's the exact same camera. It's the Z90V. The difference is the Z90V has 10-bit 422, it has SDI out, additional codecs and stuff like that. So for more pro people, that's this one here. But for the people who want to save money, the AX700 is pretty much the exact same camcorder at half the cost. 1-inch stack sensor, just like the RX100. You turn it on and it instantly locks on the face with the famous Sony eye tracking autofocus. There's a full auto button right here on the back, so if you don't want to think, you just flick that on and push record. And it's right above the switch with 3 ND filters to choose from. 12 times optical zoom, and digitally it can zoom 48 times, and even then it's still very sharp. It has an 1/8-inch mic jack and also has an XLR handle, which I don't use. I hate those. It has the great Sony eye autofocus, and again, it has a 1-inch sensor. So let's zoom all the way in and back the camera all the way up and do our blurry background test. It's too cold outside, so I don't want to go outside, so I'm just going to stand in front of a window and have them put the background outside out of focus. So this is what it looks like. This is the AX700 zoomed all the way optically, and the stuff in the background is out of focus. Now some of these other camcorders actually go more out of focus in the background, even though they have smaller sensors. I'll get to that in a minute. Also keep in mind, when you zoom all the way in, it's not going to be as sharp as if you were standing just 2 feet in front of the camera. So keep that in mind also when you're looking at this. Let's look at some low light footage. This is in my studio here. You know me, I'm not going to give you some normal boring living room shot. It finds the face right away, locks on that, and it has all these different color profiles, so you can go through all these different color profiles and try different looks and things. All right, the second camcorder coming in at half the size is the Sony AX43. Now this is not one of my favorite camcorders, but I'm going to bring it up because a lot of people mention these, the 33, the 43, and the 53. The reason I'm showing the 43 is because it is the most recent one to come out. It came out in 2020. The AX53 came out in 2016. That's 4 years earlier. And the AX33 came out in 2015, 5 years earlier. This only has a 1/2.5-inch sensor. It has a 20 times optical zoom, and with clear image, it goes 40 times, and digitally, it goes 250 times. The lens is f2 to 3.8. The shutter goes up to 1/10,000th of a second. It has a built-in ND. Now, what makes this camera interesting is when you turn it on, it's great. Isn't that great? You just open the screen, it automatically comes on, the lens cap goes off. Anyway, on the very front of this, you'll notice the lens looks like it's floating in water. That's because there's a gimbal in there. This lens is just floating separately on its own on a gimbal, which is a pretty hefty piece of equipment just floating around in there. So this is a stabilized gimbal. And that's what makes this camera actually quite heavy. This, for the small size that it is, this thing weighs like a brick. It is heavy, which is another reason why it's not one of my favorite cameras. Now the stabilizer, does it really work that good? I'll show you in a second. Here's the footage, what it looks like when you zoom in. You can get some pretty good blurry background with this thing, even though this is a tiny sensor. It's 1/2.5. Now because it's a small sensor, the footage is going to be grainier. You're going to have more noise in the picture, so you need a lot of light. Bright light will always look better than when it's in low light. And notice the autofocus. As soon as I step away from the middle of the picture, notice how it focuses on the leaves right in the middle. So the autofocus is not that great on this camera. If you want to make sure you're in focus, kind of stay in the middle of the picture. But I'm surprised. Sony usually has really good eye tracking autofocus. I'm surprised this doesn't have it for some reason. But it doesn't look bad. And it's pretty heavy for its size, probably because of the gimbal hardware in there. So this is not my top choice, but I like the small size. It has the Sony's proprietary hot shoe where you can stick a microphone in there. And the thing that I think is the deal breaker for everybody on this little thing is $1,000. It's really not that much cheaper than the AX700, which is twice the size and has a 1-inch sensor. So I don't think this is top choice. I just thought I'd bring it up because a lot of people are talking about it. All right, third one up. This is the newest one that just came out in 2022. This is the newest camcorder you can get. It's the Canon Vixia G70 UHD 4K. It's also $1,000, but it's light years ahead of the Sony AX43. It's 2 pounds, has a very clean image. The image quality, if you have enough light, is really, really nice. It has a 20 times optical zoom. That's 30 to 627 millimeters, f1.8 to 2.8, so it can get a pretty good blurry background for that cinematic look. It is a 1/2.3-inch sensor, so you do need good lighting to make it look good. Here's the normal standard profile. It's pretty boring. Here's my custom profile that I created. Makes it look a lot better. I mentioned this in the last video. The focusing is perfect. Your face is always in focus no matter what you do. For a 1/2.3-inch sensor, it does really good. The shutter only goes up to 1/1000th, but it does have ND filters and it has an 1/8-inch mic jack. It does have an optional handle where you can put XLRs on there. It has a 58mm filter size. You can screw stuff on the front if you don't want this thing on there. This thing is pretty cool though, the lens cap. Look at this. You can I love that. It's just so cool. I love playing with simple stuff like that. The thing that's the greatest about this is the face tracking. I am amazed at the face tracking ability of this camera. No matter where you are in the shot, this follows you really well. Just as good as the AX700 Sony. Canon really caught up with face tracking, and this does a really good job of keeping you in focus. It also takes pretty good stills. Look at this. These are still pictures taken with this thing. Now, when you take it right out of the box and push record, the colors are not that great. That's why the video before this one was showing you how you create your own custom picture profile to make the colors look better. And by the way, I updated one of those settings. I forgot to put one of the settings in there, so check that again. It was the knee saturation, which keeps the highlights from oversaturating. I forgot to put that in there, so check that out. It's in the most recent video. I'll put the link down below too. Anyway, this is a great camcorder, $1,000. It shoots 4K, obviously, but it's still kind of big and heavy. So let's get on to my favorite camcorder of all. This is my most favorite camcorder in the whole wide world, the Panasonic VX981. Look at this little tiny thing. It only weighs 12 ounces. That's not even a pound. This is the smallest, cheapest, lightest, most fun 4K camcorder that gives you the most pleasing look out of any camcorder you can get in the world. This is truly the best turn on and push record camcorder there is. You just flip open the screen, the front opens up, you push record, and you're ready to go. I have 3 of these, and I have them sitting around for months sometimes, and I pick it up, I open the screen, and it turns on, opens the thing, and is ready to record instantly. And the battery is still good to go. This is amazing. I mean, literally, it's just ready to shoot at an instant notice, even if it sits around for months. I love this camera. It has a 20 times optical zoom, just like the G70, which goes from 30 to 630. It has a 1.8 to 3.6 lens, so you get nice blurry backgrounds. The shutter goes up to 1/8000th of a second. The G70 only goes up to 1/1000th of a second. It has a standard 49mm filter thread on the front, so you can screw ND filters on there. It has a mic jack, and you don't have to open up the screen to get to the card. The card is at the bottom, and you don't have to take it off the stand to do that. I love that. Face tracking and autofocus is pretty darn good with this camera. It has a cleaner looking image than the G70. It's half the size, it weighs half as much, it costs less, and it's easy and fun to use. You can do manual, but you don't need it. Just leave it in Intelligent Auto Plus, and it's good to go. And you can still change the exposure and the color in Intelligent Auto Plus. So that's really, those are the 2 things you're going to want to change anyway. It smooths the skin and makes your face look younger. That's really good. I just love the look of the footage this thing makes. This thing can zoom up to 1500 times. That is mind-blowing how far this thing can zoom. Here's the low light for the VX981. Still looks really, really good. I love the colors. I love everything about this camera. And look how the face is always in focus. Really, really nice. So this is my most favorite camcorder still, the VX981 by Panasonic. Now, no camcorder video is complete without mentioning the classic little Sony Sony CX405. This came out in January 2015 and it's still selling almost a decade later, and there's a reason for that. This is literally the cheapest, tiniest, easiest to use, most fun to use camcorder there is. It's only a couple $100. Literally, you flip it open, it turns on, and it's ready to go. There's a little switch on the side so you can open the lens cap. There's no buttons on this thing whatsoever except the record button, the zoom button, and this little thing here on the screen, which by the way flips forward. And you can even work the screen with this button while it's facing forward. It has a tiny sensor. It's 1/5.8. It's only 2.3 megapixels. Even in low light, the color of this camera is better than the low light color of the Canon G70 out of the box. Another benefit of having a tiny sensor is everything is always in focus. You don't have to worry about your face being out of focus. You're going to get some grainy footage if you're in low light, but if you're in bright light and sunlight, it's actually pretty good. It only weighs 6.7 ounces. That's less than half a pound. It only shoots 1080/60, but it does shoot XAVCS. This has a 30 times optical zoom. That's more optical zoom than any of these other camcorders I'm showing you today. And what's really most amazing about this camcorder, believe it or not, is the audio. It has amazing stereo audio, 16-bit 48K Dolby Digital LPCM stereo. Listen to this. You can hear the waves coming in from the left and going to the right. There's no mic jack, but the audio quality of this thing is just amazing. The shutter goes up to 1/10,000th of a second. And yes, you can even shoot manual on this thing. Just because you're indoors doesn't mean you're going to have grainy footage if you have enough light. Here's an example. Look how clear this looks. This is actually with the little CX405, but I just have a lot of light on it. To make the footage look good with this camera, you just need more light. That's the secret to making this look good. And believe it or not, this thing actually has good image stabilization. Let's compare all these cameras for image stabilization. They all have stabilization. Obviously, none of them are as good as an action cam, but they're pretty good. Look at the little CX405 up in the right corner. This has better stabilization than some of these bigger, more expensive cameras. This little thing is amazing. Look at this. Here's a better view. Here's the G70. It's pretty basic. That's all right. Here's the AX43 with its gimbal. I don't think the gimbal really does that much, but here it is. And now look at the little CX405. Look at this little thing. This tiny little thing has better stabilization than almost any of these other camcorders. That is pretty amazing. So this little thing is a gem. All right, so these are my favorite camcorders for 2024. Most of these have a 1/2.3 sensor. In my next video, I'm going to show you other cameras that also have a 1/2.3 sensor. I guess they call them bridge cameras. Canon, Panasonic, even Kodak has some. And since it also has a 1/2.3 sensor, I'll throw in a Sony AX700. Let's see how all these compare in the next video. We're going to have some fun with 1/2.3. It's just a new fascinating category of mine. Everybody else is going bigger and bigger and bigger with their sensors. I'm going smaller and smaller and smaller and see how much we can eke out with smaller, more affordable, fun stuff that any consumer can get. Well, that's my channel. I will see you in the next video.